morning. It is Thursday, March 5th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, unmoved by Netanyahu's impassioned Congress speech, Kerry and Zarif continue nuclear talks in Switzerland. The ISIS executioner known as Jihadist John is unmasked with further revelations about his past. And later on and throughout the show, we'll check in with Daniel Ziri, who's celebrating one of the most festive holidays regionally. Daniel, where are you?
Hi, Elle. I'm here at the Florentine Circus in North Tel Aviv to celebrate Purim. We'll talk about it in a few minutes.
Good morning, I'm Yael Levi, and we begin with the ongoing nuclear talks between Iran and world powers. Wrapping up 3 days of talks with his Iranian counterpart, Mohammad Jawad Zarif, in Switzerland, Secretary of State John Kerry said some progress has been made in the negotiations, which are due to resume on March 15th. Now, although in remarks made at the end of the talks, Kerry claimed many obstacles still remain before a late March deadline for an outright accord between Iran and the 6 world powers, the United States Secretary used the opportunity of speaking to reporters to add that simply demanding Iran's capitulation is no way to get a nuclear deal with the Islamic Republic. That is reiterating the White House's response to Benjamin Netanyahu's impassioned speech against a deal with Iran at the U.S. House of Representatives 2 days ago. Netanyahu's speech, in which he vigorously blasted the Obama administration's Iran policy, claiming it paved the path to a nuclear-armed Iran, was met with thunderous applause on Capitol Hill. But elsewhere, it was received with disdain and even ridicule. The following report has the details.
A day after one of the most anticipated speeches in recent memory, some were surprised to find life continuing as normal, though there were plenty of strong reactions from around the globe. In Washington, U.S. President Barack Obama stressed that he hadn't had time to sit down and watch Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress, only going over a transcript.
On the core issue, which is how do we prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, the Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives.
The Prime Minister, after landing back in Israel, responded, releasing the following statement.
I presented a practical alternative which would impose tougher restrictions on Iran's nuclear program, extending Iran's breakout time by years. I also called on the P5+1 to insist on a deal that would link the lifting of those restrictions to Iran ceasing its sponsorship of terrorism around the world, its aggression against its neighbors, and its calls for Israel's destruction. I heard encouraging responses from both Democrats and Republicans. They understood that the current proposal would lead to a bad deal and that the alternative is a better deal. Happy Purim.
In Iran, Netanyahu's dramatics were received dismissively.
This entire ordeal was performed in the Congress in the shape of a political show, which shows that the Congress of a great country, claiming to be managers of the world, has been hired by a fake regime.
Back on Capitol Hill, there were those who thought Netanyahu had shown himself to be one of the great leaders of our time.
The Prime Minister, again, is doing what I believe he needs to do as leader of the greatest country we have as an ally to the United States. He has to do this.
But on the other side of the American political divide, it appears serious damage may have been done. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, a firm supporter of Israel, said she was near tears during Netanyahu's speech, adding that she was saddened by the insult to the intelligence of the United States. The reactions of congressional Democrats are not to be taken for granted, considering the traditionally robust ties between Jerusalem and Congress. Overall, 57 Democrats marked their protest in absence Tuesday, though their seats were filled by substitutes. The Israeli election on March 17th will reveal if Washington and Jerusalem will have to endure 22 more months of the tense and volatile Netanyahu-Obama relationship.
Joining me in studio this morning is Director of the Arms Control and Regional Security Program at the INSS, Dr. Emily Landau. Emily, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And to discuss the political fallout from Netanyahu's speech straight off the Prime Minister's plane, journalist and political blogger Tal Schneider. Tal, good morning to you. And also to check the polls and to figure out a new phenomena, Nimrod Dua, campaign manager for V15, director of the One Voice Israel as well now.
No,
just
not
V15.
Director, just V15.
That's a different thing. There we go. But we start straight though with Iran, Dr. Landau. I want to talk about Kerry to begin with, because as all this brouhaha was happening in D.C., you know, Netanyahu speaking, whatnot, people forget that simultaneously John Kerry was meeting with Mohammad Jawad Zarif in Switzerland, and progress has been made in those talks. That said, when Kerry came out also, he had the following statement to say, which was also directed not just to the reporters, but mainly at Israel. Let's have a listen to what John Kerry had to say coming out of those meetings in Geneva with his Iranian counterparts.
We also want an agreement that is sustainable over time, and particularly that achieves the singular goal of proving that Iran's nuclear program is and will remain peaceful. We aren't going to be distracted by external factors or politics. We will continue to be guided by our experts, our scientists, our national interests, and those of our partners and allies. And most importantly, as President Obama said yesterday, we know that no one has presented a more viable, lasting alternative for how you actually prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So, folks, simply demanding that Iran capitulate is not a plan.
Dr. Landau, we're listening, when you listen to John Kerry, and you actually nodded your head now as we all listen to it in studio, simply demanding that Iran capitulate is not a viable plan. Netanyahu did stand on that stage. He claimed three things that weren't, I don't know if they're feasible. They need to stop supporting terror. They need to stop threatening the annihilation of Israel. But that's not a viable plan. What is a plan in your mind?
No, I think what Netanyahu said in that regard has been misconstrued. He didn't say that those three things needed to be done before there is a deal. He said very clearly that before restrictions are lifted, he's relating to the sunset provision. Right. There's a very problematic element in the negotiation, and that is the sunset provision. In other words, the idea that after 10 to 15 years, all of these restrictions that whatever restrictions are put on Iran will be lifted without there being any talk about Iran's motivation in the nuclear realm, which we know is aspiration to a military capability. And what he's saying is, at least with regard to the sunset provision, don't lift the restrictions until Iran fulfills those conditions. In other words, he's not saying that needs to be done now before the deal. He's saying that needs to be done before the deal is lifted. And I think he has a very, very, very valid point in that regard. That was probably the only element that was new in what he said. But Yael, I want to ask you, how many times have we sat here and heard the negotiators come out of the negotiations and say there has been progress, but we still have substantial issues in dispute? We hear this mantra every time it ends. We never hear the details.
Not to play devil's advocate.
We never know what's
not to
going
play
on.
Devil's advocate, but isn't that actually the process of negotiations in every place? Obstacles remain what not. I know. I'm lifting that. And we do not know all the details of this framework agreement.
But this is the problem. They're playing with this issue of the details, right? On the one hand, they don't disclose details. On the other hand, some of the criticism that was leveled at Netanyahu was, we haven't heard anything new. Well, you demanded that Netanyahu not say anything new, and then you castigate him for not saying anything new. So either disclose the information or don't disclose the information. But you can't have it both ways and criticize those that are criticizing the negotiation for both reasons. And a final point, Netanyahu really is not talking about capitulation, even though I think it's unfortunate to talk about the steps that Iran has to take in terms of capitulation. Iran is a violator of the NPT. It's been working on a military capability for decades, and that's why these negotiations are ongoing. And yes, indeed, Iran has all the work to do in order to convince the international community that it has backed away from those aspirations. And therefore, when Secretary of State Kerry stands there and says, we want to do everything possible to ensure that Iran's nuclear activities are solely peaceful, my question as an analyst who's been following this for 12 years is, why in the world is the IAEA investigation into the weaponization aspects of Iran's nuclear program not squarely on the agenda of the political talks? It's in a parallel process being led by the IAEA. The head of the IAEA keeps saying that Iran is not cooperating with their investigation. Just 10 days ago, or 2 weeks ago, there was the latest report of the IAEA, again saying that Iran is not cooperating with the investigation. We We know they have been stonewalling. So how in the world are you talking about ensuring that this is purely peaceful when you're not confronting Iran on the issue that is at the heart of this negotiation, which is Iran's weaponization work, that is the clearest violation of the NPT, and the reason why Iran cannot be trusted, and all of the demands for dismantlement. I'm confused, and the administration is not giving answers. And to brush away, aside the criticism, to marginalize all criticism as, you don't know the details, you're a warmonger, you're a hawk, all the things we've been hearing over the past year, that's not a serious approach. If this administration is so sure about the way it's negotiating, then deal with the criticism head on. Don't marginalize it. The concerns that Netanyahu has raised are concerns that I have raised in my writing. Right. Other experts on this issue have raised in their writing, and they're across the board. It's not a political issue. Many experts in the United States saying the same thing, nuclear experts that are very, very concerned. This isn't about politics. It's not about Netanyahu.
Yeah, it has become, about politics.
This
it has become about politics.
It has. Yeah. However, I think Netanyahu's speech, actually, maybe even ironically, might be the element that will change the debate a little bit. If you look at the editorials that came out in the Washington Post and even an op-ed in the New York Times, the message that they're saying is Obama needs to answer the concerns raised by Netanyahu. And I would add, they're not just raised by Netanyahu. They're serious concerns.
Okay, then let's say we get to March 31st, and there is a framework, and it's a framework agreement also.
Now they're only talking about an understanding. They've already backed away from
the framework. So in many ways, clearly there are things that remain on the table that are not being resolved. But there's also a point that was raised in the studio yesterday, shortly after the speech, that said that, what is another option? At the end of the day, when Kerry says not capitulating, but sanctions themselves, and over the course of the last 10 years, we've seen Iran edge towards this type of a capability, actually also under the, not under the leadership, but Netanyahu has been prime minister over the course of the last 6 years. They're edging forward. Sanctions did not work in the case of Korea. Sanctions historically have not worked in stopping countries. So wouldn't the argument of the United States, and I'm asking you to sit and speak with the people in question because there's nothing else to do, and maybe there are details that we don't know. What are the details that you, as an expert, would be happy with in an agreement as such?
No, look, of course this needs to be settled through negotiations. And actually, Netanyahu, for the first time, said explicitly what I think needed to be said. Rather than saying, if this doesn't work, Israel will take care of its own security with very, strong hints that Israel might take military action, for the first time he said, the alternative is not war. That's not what the critics are talking about. The critics are saying, negotiate better, do a better job. You have leverage. You have leverage, and you have had leverage for 13 months. Use it. What does it mean to use it? It means when you're at the negotiations table and Iran says on any issue, let's say the ballistic missiles, that's non-nuclear, we're not talking about it. Don't accept that. The fact that Iran says we don't want to talk about that should not mean that that becomes your position. You, I mean the P5+1. You need to use your leverage to bargain effectively. You say to Iran, no, guess what? Ballistic missiles are one component of a nuclear weapons capability, and we will discuss it. And by the way, it's included in a UN Security Council resolution from 2010, and that's why you're going to discuss it. Don't say, because the Iranians say no, we can't deal with it. This is the problem with the negotiation. Too quickly accepting all of the things that Iran says it won't deal with as, okay, we can't do it. And understand that even if Iran gets upset and leaves the negotiation, they will come back, because now for the first time the P5+1 do have leverage through the sanctions that still exist. The Iranians are at the table in order to get sanctions lifted, and to do that they need the cooperation of the international community, first and foremost America. So use that. Know that the Iranians are not going to leave, and even if they leave temporarily, they will come back, but the P5+1 will be in a stronger position to get Iran to agree to their very legitimate demands. That's what it means to bargain.
said Emily Landau, which I'm thinking we should send you to that. Seriously, you should be sitting at that table, but I'm not releasing you to go over to Geneva. You're locked at this table for now. As we look at the impact of both the end of the negotiations and the Netanyahu speech. Ahead of delivering his Congress speech, Netanyahu came under harsh criticism by his political opponents at home. And, they claimed he charged ahead with the speech against the White House, whatnot. And in order to, reap political benefits, and that leads me to you, Nimrod. That's an argument that many people make towards Netanyahu, that it has been a political game for him. And actually, you know what? I'm going to start with Tal Schneider.
I just want to say something regarding what Emily just said. She actually explains much better things that were, for me, sitting there above Netanyahu's head on the galley of the reporters, I couldn't figure out from his speech. So she explained it much better than him. And regarding specifically the fact that the terms are now regarding the sunset provision. And he made it seem like those are terms that he wants to, be overcast above all. Just don't talk with Iran. But it wasn't perceived like that. And when reporters, and I was sitting next to American reporters, and when they were listening to the Prime Minister, the first notion they got were like, oh my God, he's demanding a regime change. And a regime change, when you say that to American people,
that's a huge statement.
That was written in the entire U.S. press. So one of the problems with Netanyahu is that he's not doing hasbara. He's not explaining himself. He's not talking to reporters. And I was on the plane on the way there and on the way back. He's not talking to the press, not to the Israeli press specifically, and he's not talking to the American press. He's only doing the speech. He brought himself to the political point where the U.S. administration and the U.S. public is can't even listen to him anymore because of the way, the blunt and rude way it was done. There is no even an open mind to listen to factual-based arguments like were mentioned here.
It's also the problem of the other side that is not open to listening.
Obviously, but there is both sides to the wedding, as you may say. And we are getting to the point where 2 weeks before election, instead of having a debate within the Israeli political leaders, we have a fierceful debate between our Prime Minister and the U.S. President. And we are watching it from the side. We are not even part of it because we can't interview neither of them. The debate is taking place on, social networks.
They're speaking to each other via speeches or little sound bites.
And it seems bad if you look from this. And I do agree that I don't think any other political leader in Israel will approach these things probably differently. I mean, there's no argument, but it's unexplained. It's really unexplained.
But it's unexplained, and it goes in with that criticism, though, that you have just mentioned towards Prime Minister Netanyahu, which comes also from within Israel, is what sparked, I'm leading back to Nimrod, is what sparked, a very valid point, is what sparked a movement called V15. V15 in Israel, Vote 15.
Victory.
Victory 15. I'm American. Yeah, amen. Victory 15, a movement that was is much talked about in Israel. And it's a movement that basically has one agenda, and that's replacing Netanyahu and campaigning and grassrooting in that. You are the campaign manager of V15. Before we explain exactly what that means and how it falls into the parameters of this entire story, let's take a look at a clip of V15 and what it means.
Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, in this deadly game of thrones, history has placed us at a fateful crossroads. We must now choose between two paths. One path leads to a bad deal. It will only change the Middle East for the worse. The second path, however difficult, could lead to a much better deal. Now we're being told that the only alternative to this bad deal is war. That's just not true. The alternative to this bad deal is a much better deal. Now, I want you to think about that. Literally.
Okay, so you took the speech.
Yeah. And we kind of changed it around.
And you kind of changed it for, okay, Nimrod. Here's the thing. It was a very controversial movement several weeks ago, V15. But what stands behind the idea of just, you guys are going to people's houses. You knocked on my door, actually.
Yeah, we already knocked on 100,000 doors all over the country. And we asked people to pledge to change the government. We're not an anti-Netanyahu movement. We're anti-the right movement. We want to change the government from the right to the center and the left.
Well, there are those who will argue that that's a statement. It does feel like it's just changed the regime, changed the apropos regime change.
Netanyahu is a symbol for a set of values we do not support.
Okay. The reaction to your, as you're grassrooting, as you're going through doors, what is the feeling of, the Israeli voter? Because the last 48, I would say the last 3 weeks, with, when it comes to Israel, when it comes to what matters, was only the speech and Iran and security and whatnot. Does the Israeli voter, in your mind, because you guys have been speaking to people, you've been knocking on doors, do they care about anything else?
They don't care at all about Iran. When you come to people's houses, when you knock on their
Tyler
doors,
Schneider's smiling. Yeah, okay.
It shows in the polls. I mean, they care about the economy.
Exactly.
Sure.
When you go to their houses and you ask them, why do you want to change the government, and their eyes are lighting up, and they say, I want to change the government because I don't see an economic future over here. I'm afraid for my job. I'm afraid for housing. They're afraid for tons of stuff which are not at all related to security in Iran. Some people say, yeah, maybe Iran, ISIS, stuff like that, but it's not the major thing. And as the age of the voter gets lower and lower, and under the age of 50, they all talk only about economy.
Only economy. I wonder if that translates into the polls, but we're going to start with you, Tal, first, before we look at these polls. You came off that plane. It was a show. It was a political show. It was Netanyahu at his best, the orator of the century. Does that register here in Israel? Do you think that's going to make a dent?
I have to tell you, first, I was in AIPAC also and in the Congress, and obviously the Prime Minister is admired over there. And you can see I was, again, sitting in front of the Republican Party, and you see in their eyes, they have like their own campaign coming up in 2016.
Exactly.
And they're looking at him, and they're like, oh my God, can we have him please for our campaign? I mean, there isn't any candidate in the Republican Party that is doing such a fantastic job in getting into the president's, getting him upset. I mean,
under her skin, under Obama's skin.
So they need someone like that. And I actually saw that, and I thought to myself, oh my God, Sarah Netanyahu was absolutely right with the things she said that were published in Ma'ariv about how Netanyahu is, really, really going to be a good candidate for the U.S. presidential elections. That was amazing. But then you get off the plane and you get out of AIPAC and you land back in Israel, and the 16,000 AIPAC members and the 500 plus Congress members don't have the right to vote here.
Exactly.
And they don't even affect the Israeli public opinion, because Israeli public opinion polls indicate that all the Israeli care is about the housing crisis and the end of the month, the economy. And if you see the polls, Iran is down there at 10%, where the economic issues are above 50.
Let's take a look at them. I mean, these are the recent polls in. Let's look at the numbers. First poll in, that's Channel 2, Israeli mainstream channel, primetime mainstream channel. Likud at 23 mandates. Zionist Union, and this is as recent, I believe, as post the speech, at 24 already. The Jewish Home 12, that would be I would say, the partners of a Likud party in the event that that's a coalition that is formed. Okay, looking at that, still, it's a very...
You do have to convince voters on the topics that are on their mind, and you
but
cannot convince them to vote.
Looking at Nimrod, when you look at these numbers, 23, versus 24, still, but to both of you, Nimrod, let's start with you. That's smack in the middle.
But it's a matter of recommendations. How many recommendations the president will get for a different nomination to be the prime minister, and the meaning of all of that numbers is that every vote counts. That if we want to really change the government, everyone needs to get out of the house and put the right ballot in the ballot box. That's it.
Yeah, I can add that the Likud had to campaign in the last couple of weeks about the economy. It was unpleasant for them, and they decided not to touch it. But obviously, they could have come with a plan to the public, saying, "Okay, maybe we made some mistakes, but we are going to do A, B, C." They decided not to touch it. They could have come with a plan and say, "We need to do A, B, C," and maybe the voters will, their base would, listen to them and believe in them. But they didn't come up with a written plan, and people don't like it. They don't like it that don't see a policy or planning for what's going to happen next if they'll vote for them. So that's a problem for the Likud, and it's showing up in the polls.
If I may, every time these elections became something about not security, not Iran, the Likud tried to spin it back to those issues. Every time there was something about the housing or the state of the economy, or when people have been aggravated about actual day-to-day lives, the Likud spinned it around. And we've seen it with the attack on us, which was all a spin to change the focus of attention on the Likud. And we've seen it now that we had a housing report by the state controller, and whoop, here we go, Iran again, Iran. It's for Netanyahu, it's okay to be in the safe side of what he's good at. But what about what's good for us?
Emily, I was waiting for you to jump in and say and disagree. Yes.
No, I just have a question. If it is the case that the Israeli people care about the economy and not about Iran, why were the other parties, the opposition, so worried about Netanyahu going to Congress and this helping him in the elections?
As a journalist, I can
if
answer
it's
that
your
it's an amazing...
assessment that doesn't speak to the people.
Well, after a month of talking about Iran, constantly, or we do it, reporters, you do still see in the polls that people are more concerned about the economy. And of course, the opposition was worried that people will, the polls will shift. But I have to say something. Israeli public is talking about economy every time before election, but when it goes to the polls, sometimes it dumps at the end of the day, on the day of the voting process, there
is the point more that when the Israeli voter goes into the booth,
they forget what they said a month before.
I totally disagree about it. I'm sorry. If you look at Lapid, for example, Lapid was not elected for security issues. He gained rise in seats because of he talked about the middle class and what's happening to him. And this is
which is a problem in this round of election, because people won't believe that white horse of the last election, and when it comes to economy and they walk into the booth, who do they have to vote for?
So when people go to the polls at the end of the day, voting process is an emotional process, and they get out of their guts, their gut feeling, and then sometimes on that day, obviously, all the fears and the worries are coming out, even though they said a month ahead that they only care about the economy.
Right.
So that's the reason the Likud is playing that card, constantly. I have to say there's another thing that is interesting. Netanyahu and Ya'alon and also Herzog, in the last few weeks, they kept saying, don't vote for the small parties, vote for the big parties, because we need to run the government. Right. We want to be big. I just heard on the way here, Ya'alon, the defense minister, saying, you don't go for the fashion, parties, just go for the big establishment. And you know what? People are not listening. They just, they hear him, and still on the polls they go for Likud, for the Lapid and the Kachon.
For the small
so
parties,
they're not convinced by this message who says, vote for the big ones.
You got 2 seconds.
See what happens.
Yeah, well, we do have to see. We can't count on the polls so much, though.
Yeah.
Usually they say there are about 25, 30 seats of undecided votes, and they all decided in the last 3 days. And this is a major.
It's a major. The last 3 days. Actually, I think the next several days are going to be incredibly interesting.
Some people make a decision on the voting day.
On the voting day, of course. I may be one of them. You never heard from me. Okay, but guys, thank you so much for being with me today. When we get back, more details emerge about ISIS executioner Jihadist John. We'll take a closer look. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Thank you for staying with us. I-24 News, March 5th. March 5th, 2015. Dyslexia is a horrible disease. Where I am joined, as always, as has been the case over the course of the several days, weeks, by Ruthie Sinai, I-24 News, senior news editor, who keeps me in check and tells you the news you missed while scanning the headlines. And what did we miss?
10 days from now are the Ides of March.
They are the Ides of March. Right.
Julius Caesar was, okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody does, but we'll talk about it as it gets closer. Okay. Terrible story. The U.S. ambassador in South Korea is sitting having breakfast at some event. Some fellow gets up from the crowd, from the audience, and attacks him with a knife, as we can see in the picture here on Al Jazeera, and it's been everywhere. He was cut in the face, he was cut in the wrist, he was bleeding quite profusely.
Do we know what happened? We know who the assailant was? Do we know what happened there?
Yeah, the guy belongs to some anti-war organization, and what brought this on was these drills, these annual military drills between the United States and South Korea. The North Koreans, reacted another way. They just fired some missiles.
A missile into the air, saying this is what we can do.
Yeah, this guy came with a knife. He's apparently known to police. He's done this once or twice before towards other people.
I was going to say he has.
He has. But the frightening thing, of course, is where was the ambassador's security detail? I mean, I think this is a serious breach of
very
security.
Much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
How did he get into the room with a knife and so on? Yeah. So
Yeah,
there you have
on.
it. Yeah, okay, speaking of people with dangerous weapons, the marathon bombing in Boston almost 2 years ago, trial of one of the two brothers. If you remember, the first brother was Tsarnaev was killed by police in the chase after the bombing, or a day after the bombing. His brother is standing. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is standing trial in Boston. The defense is not saying he didn't do it. They're admitting.
What would be the line of defense on this?
He did it. There's no doubt he did it, but he was basically not the instigator. It was his older brother who had a lot of influence over him.
Who cannot take the stand because he's dead.
Of course.
Yes.
Obviously this guy's going away for life.
I was going to ask you, I think Boston is not
death penalty.
It's not a death penalty state.
No.
So
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts is not a death penalty state, but still, this guy's going away for life.
No doubt. 3 dead, and then in the bombing itself, some 200 some wounded, and of course the policeman the security guard at MIT that the two brothers shot dead when they were fleeing police.
What's disturbing about this, and this is coming to my head just now, this is obviously these were not ISIS, but very much homegrown terrorism. Maybe one of the first incidents that we saw. I think 2 years ago.
These two kids grew up in the States.
Americanized completely.
Absolutely.
With animosities.
They radicalized towards Islam and read all sorts of pamphlets and booklets and
then took action, quote unquote. Yes.
And I just want to add one thing, which I saw before, that 20 minutes after the bombing, Tsarnaev went to the Whole Foods store across the Charles in Cambridge, where surveillance video shows him at the freezer pondering which iced milk drink, chocolate drink he wants to drink.
Okay, so many things I could say about buying Yoo-hoo before bombing a marathon.
Well, after. He developed a thirst.
Right after the bombing. Okay, yes.
Okay, and speaking of bombings, Argentina. The Jerusalem Post has a story about how they took out a full-page ad, the Argentine government, 2 days ago, saying basically, let us revive this agreement we had with Iran. This is an agreement that was struck down by a court in Buenos Aires. The agreement was basically between the government of Iran and the government of Argentina that the Iranians would help find who was responsible for this
1994 bombing.
1994 bombing, in which 85 of a Jewish community center, in which 85 people were killed, and this is the basis for allegations against President Kirchner that she colluded with the Iranians to hide actually who was behind it, because it's sort of widely considered that some sort of Iranian hand was behind this bombing, and it's like, bringing in the cat to guard the cream.
I was about to say, the people who are supposedly and all fingers pointed them as being the perpetrators should help solve the
but she claims.
Do we think that this is an attempt just to bring? Well, I'm probably stating the obvious. Bring Iran back into the fold to maintain also financial deals with the country between Argentina.
That is part of that is probably part of the reasoning that Argentina's financial woes are such that they wanted to get all sorts of concessions and cheap oil and other goods from Iran. But I think it's more of a way now to basically, Kirchner has been accused of being behind the murder of the prosecutor, Nisman, and I think it's kind of a way to prove basically that she wasn't trying to cover up the Iranian role in the bombings, and that in fact she is interested in the truth coming out, but the only way to do it is with Iranian help.
Okay, yeah.
Who knows, maybe.
Let's see how that one flies. Yeah.
Okay, Yael, you have small kids.
Yes.
You will be interested in this next item.
Uh-oh.
Yep. New York Times.
We can feel junk food. Okay.
No, not junk food. Spanking.
Yes.
Spanking, yes. Okay, so France has been found guilty of not adhering to European standards and laws on corporal punishment for kids. Basically, the French do allow a little tushy spanking in the home.
They do? Okay.
And this is against the European...
I'm clearly going to have to pack the belt. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
but hold on, stop. Rights body scolds France, saying spanking kids is a no-no.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I agree, but are we going to get government and, you know...
In the home?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How does one monitor this?
It's very hard to. But, you know, they're basing this on court decisions where parents have been allowed, you know, where complaints were brought and then the parents...
But you know what disturbs me about that is that you walk down the street with your kid who's having a tantrum, okay, who's having a big tantrum, and you end up just saying, okay, no, we're going home now. And you basically drag them because sometimes you end up doing that and you find yourself in jail.
Yeah, you could. You could, yeah.
I could be arrested. Okay, yes, moving on.
And speaking of kids, this is a really horrible story. I apologize in advance. CNN tells us of these maternity tourism. These are women who come mostly from China to the United States, pay a lot of money to have their kids in the United States so that they're U.S. citizens and they get Social Security. They're put up in these apartments that are, you know, they buy these packages that include, you know, trips to Disneyland while they're pregnant, you know, and medical care. I'm sorry, this is horrible.
No, it's ridiculous, but who finances this type of thing?
They do. These women pay $50,000 of you know, for this deal, for this package. The IRS, FBI, everybody, all the alphabet soup has cracked down on these hotels. They raided them. They found women. They found some of the tour operators, as it were. You know, basically, this is abuse of. I mean, this is lying about, you know, visa. You know, in applying for visas of why you want to come to the United States. Well, I want to come in order to have a baby, so he's a U.S. citizen. But I'm not going to tell them that.
No. It's. I'm not going to tell them. But not only that, it's just the fact that I got to say that the fact that the United States is still the hub where people want, you know, to raise. Well, the land of opportunity, land of dreams. You and I know that's not the case anymore, in many ways, but still,
you know,
okay.
People do
Don't take the maternity tourism package, please. No. It's really, really, really unethical. Yes,
absolutely. Moving on. Okay, you remember there was a horrible, horrible case in New Delhi of a woman, a student, raped on a bus about a year and some ago. Okay, she was raped. She was gang raped, and finally died of her wounds. The fellow, one of the ringleader, who's in jail and facing a death penalty, was interviewed for a documentary which aired in Britain. The Indian government has banned the projection of this documentary. I've started an inquiry on how the filmmaker got access to this guy who was in jail, but you know, she said she had all the permits. And why are they banning this? Right. Because it will, lend justification. He says, the guy says, he says basically she brought it on herself. She shouldn't have come out dressed as she was, and she shouldn't have gone alone on the bus.
I'm reiterating what you said at the beginning of this bit. A 12-year-old girl that I think the bulk of the world remembers this horrific case. Yeah. The gang rape, the death afterward, just horrible, horrible, horrible. But it's this type of mentality within a population.
Absolutely, but I'm not sure that that banning this film is the way to go around correcting the problem. You know, I think it should be floated. It should be
floated
talked
up completely.
About,
so that's not allowed to be broadcast right now. Okay. Yes. Finally.
Okay. Pooh Mountain, Everest.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're climbing the Everest and you really need a bathroom, and what do? You go, you know. Anyway, apparently the Nepalese authorities have been complaining that the place is one big stinkhole.
I'm sorry, no, I'm looking at that picture.
Tons of excrement.
That is disgusting. People, that's the Everest. Yes.
Well, you know, some people do carry some sort of chemical toilet thingy, but most of them apparently
And then,
don't.
you know, I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, if you manage to reach the top of the Everest,
don't you deserve...
Exactly, deserve to pee wherever you want to pee. My God, look at what you've done.
The problem, dear.
Exactly.
But anyway, so, you know, they're starting to crack down on this, and they're going to fine people and
take it away from there.
Yeah.
Ruthie, stick with me as we move along, but thank you so much. I'm going to keep that in mind next time I climb the Everest, which happens once a year. Thank you. Moving along, Jassim Emwazi, the father of the ISIS executioner known as Jihadist John, told a Kuwaiti newspaper yesterday that there is no proof that his son Muhammad was the masked man who has appeared in dozens of ISIS propaganda videos and seen beheading at least 5 Westerners. Earlier reports said the family had recognized their son's voice in the video. Now, the alleged executioner was born in Kuwait, that would be Jihadist John, to a family of Iraqi origin. His parents moved to Britain in 1993 when he was 6 years old. where he earned a degree in computer programming before traveling to Syria around 2012. And of course, Jihadi John has been dominating reports about ISIS, especially in Western media, over the course of the last several weeks. But this new bit of information about his family in Kuwait, and also an audio tape that was found of him, basically detailing his mantra, has surfaced as well. Let's watch the following report and break that down afterwards.
On the propaganda tapes, he is gruff and threatening.
Will begin to slaughter your people.
And this is what Mohammed Amwazi sounds like speaking normally.
He started telling me, what do you think of 9/11? I told him this is a wrong thing.
In an audio tape made public this morning of him complaining about what he called threats from British security services some 6 years ago.
And we're going to keep a close eye on you, Mohammed. We already have been. We're going to keep a close eye on you, threatening me. And then, just went out.
Authorities say Amwazi's mother recognized her son's voice on the very first of the Jihadi John tapes.
You have plotted against us.
Showing the American hostage, James Foley, but that she never notified authorities. And this morning, U.S. officials are applauding efforts by Twitter to shut down the very accounts used to distribute those gruesome videos. According to people involved in the operation, Twitter in the last week has quietly shut down or suspended at least 2,000 accounts connected to ISIS, a major escalation.
I would say this is as serious an attack on ISIS Twitter as we've seen so far.
Also under close scrutiny this morning, members of Amwazi's family still in London. We spotted Amwazi's younger brother, Omar, out on the street.
ABC News, can we ask just a couple of questions?
About your brother.
But he ran away when ABC News tried to ask him about his brother, the ISIS killer.
Ruthie Sinai is still with me in studio. I'm just looking at this video about, Jihadi's John, brother in London running away. At the end of the day, that's one of the main things that we're focusing on the Western media, because it's a sexy element. That case in point, though, well, first of all, why do you think that that's the only thing that interests us while ISIS forges along in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, because it's something we can relate to. I mean, he's a Westerner. It's something, as we were talking about before when we were doing the press segment about homegrown terrorism and the Boston marathon bombers, same story. This kid grew up in England. He was 6 years old when he moved there. He went to a regular school, and he went to Westminster College, which is a fairly good school in London.
Growing up in a Western hub, yet being somehow more radicalized than people who grew up in the Middle East.
Right. Now, look, the thing is, this is beyond radicalization. I mean, yes. the guy's a psychopath. I'm sorry.
No, true.
But yeah, the thing, there's a lot of disturbing things about the story. The MI5 knew all about him. They were in touch with him. They tried to entrap him a couple of years ago. They knew about the family. The family, by the way, is also under surveillance. The father was or is still in Kuwait. The Kuwaiti authorities were going to bring him in for questioning. Now everybody is, of course, getting on board, and Twitter is getting on board to shut down these accounts, although one wonders because these things will just pop up again. It's
coming and coming as we hear this information coming in, and all simultaneous to all of this, Iraqi forces are trying to encircle ISIS in Iraq. And
right.
I'm mentioning this because Jihadi John, a sexy story. Even I, as a journalist, am fascinated by it. But when we're looking at what's going on in Iraq, which is not getting that much traction in the press, I'm looking at the possibility where the Iraqi army, if they lose this battle around Tikrit, what does that mean for Iraq?
Well, this is a very strategic and important battle, and this is supposed to be the prelude to getting back Mosul. And the West also, the Iranians are very heavily involved in this battle for Tikrit. There's an Iranian Revolutionary Guard general running basically this operation. Supposedly they've been fairly successful. Islamic State has kind of ceded parts of it and moved out, and hopefully...
And time will tell. I think this will be a defining week. Ruthie, thank you for being with me in studio today, shedding light on all these issues. And now, something completely different in the words of Monty Python, because it is Monty Python Day. No, it's Purim, where we go live to Daniel Ziri to tell us where she will be speaking to us later on the show. Daniel, what's going on where you're at? What in God's name is it?
Well, yeah, Purim is the holiday where everyone dresses up, hence the hat for earlier. I'm not going to wear it during the whole shot, but basically, it's really a carnival. It's kind of the Jewish Halloween, and this is why we're at the circus today in North Tel Aviv.
Behind us,
Florentine Circus.
And Danielle, you will tell us everything when we get back. And thank you all for staying with us. Stay back after the news. Welcome back. It is. Sorry, it is still Thursday, March 5th, 2015. This is still the morning edition. Sadly, I am still Yael Levy.
Or are you?
Or am I? I'm going to put the glasses back. No, we're serious. Amit Kling, the Unabomber.
This is
you. Amit Kling with me in studio.
This is degrading for us both.
Very much degrading. So, as we are joined by the one and only Amit Kling for the viral spiral that is the web review, I have to explain why I'm dressed like a purple Minnie Mouse. Today is Purim.
I thought you were a prince.
Good. That's good. We're gonna go into a rendition of Purple Rain very shortly, but of course it is Purim, and we will explain to our audience and to our thousands of viewers very shortly what Purim means and why we look like that. It's essentially the Jewish Halloween, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much so.
It's Jewish Halloween. But Amit Kling here with the viral spiral out of the Persian bazaar that he just came from. That is the web review. What do you have for us? Yes.
All right. So Ben Carson, who is a Republican neurosurgeon, is his title.
Really?
That's amazing. That's how everybody refers to him.
A Republican neurosurgeon. Okay.
He's a Republican Party figure, and he went on CNN and
Right.
he was asked, was being gay a choice, and said absolutely, and prison proves it.
Oh my God.
Now,
yes, I think
you
need to say more, but right up there on controversial statements, I think that ranks in the top 10.
Right
Controversial doesn't even come.
That is.
And prison proves it.
Proves it.
Proves it. Yes.
Well, I would say it proves its choice for half.
For half.
I should
yeah,
not
and can you
have.
blame people?
I
No, you
should
shouldn't have said that. Moving along. Yes.
Okay. The New York Times.
Yes.
Publishes a report that says that fewer women run big companies than men named John.
Sorry, that's a good one. Yeah, so it's usually the white male called John.
Yes, it's both.
Not to be confused with Jihadi John, obviously. No. Okay.
Yes,
Right.
they decapitate our economy.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Okay, yes,
This is
does
my
that.
lucky face.
Yeah, that's your lucky face.
I always wanted two beards. Okay, this is a brief video.
Yes.
If we can see that. That's it's a parody that shows what would it look like if Wes Anderson directed X-Men.
Okay, if Wes Anderson directed X-Men,
it would
this
look
is
like
what
this.
Okay.
To my attention that your mutant abilities have recently emerged, I am extending to you an invitation to join the Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. Here you will join our small but extremely talented student body.
So, you're the new guy? Yeah, I guess so.
Big Wes Anderson fans. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah, you fit
This
it
is
for a
like the
jumpsuit.
That's a
view from the Rushmore. Exactly.
It's mostly playing on Rushmore.
On
It's
Rushmore.
mostly a play on Rushmore, but it also shows that what kind of how specific that aesthetic is and how prevalent it is.
True, and at the end of the day, maybe that's what we need. That type of a combination of Wes Anderson.
I could say probably the most visually recognized American filmmaker today. With the clearest visual footprint.
I'm trying to look serious, but I'm gonna have to stop looking at myself on the screen. Yes, and
yeah, all right. The Atlantic reports on a woman. We talked about the diversification of emoji recently.
Right. Yes, love that.
She's angry there is no ginger emoji.
Yes. No, I'm sorry. I'm with that. Okay. The ginger people, listen.
Now, unfortunately, the organization she works for is not called the Red-Headed League. Bam.
Bam. Still.
Sherlock Holmes reference.
No, but I'm sorry. You know what? My dad was a ginger, okay? And those people, really, they get a bad rap. I mean, I think more power to the ginger people. They are... It's a personal thing. I can't say this wearing a purple boa. Moving along, yes. Right. Ginger emojis to everybody. Go ahead.
Yes, and this is the last one. Kanye West, he spoke...
Kenya, not to be confused with Jesus. Okay, Kanye West spoke about...
He addressed Oxford, and the quotes are amazing.
Right.
Let's hear...
Wait. Here's more or less exactly what Kanye West said in Oxford earlier, which was what? In brief.
Okay, in brief, he thinks the Nobel Peace Prize should be covered like the Grammys.
I'm sorry, he's right.
I know. That's what's amazing. That's what is always fascinating for me about Kanye West.
He usually says these crazy things.
He says crazy things which are right, but are said in such an out there fashion that everybody treats him like a maniac. He's an egomaniac, but he's also...
Maybe it's like, I always wonder out loud that maybe those crazy people that you see in New York, walking down the street, or, you know, or in Jerusalem. It's New York or Jerusalem. You see crazy people walking down the street go, no, I can't, speaking to themselves.
The end is coming?
Yeah, the end is coming.
The end is coming.
Yeah, or they're hearing voices in their head. Maybe they are truly speaking to God. That, to me, is Kanye West.
Which sounds perfectly sane coming from a person wearing
this Minnie Mouse thing. Yeah, I am a serious journalist,
What
definitely.
is going on? Yes, what happened?
And, hold on, that would be it for us? Yes, that would be it for us.
All right.
And now is the moment where we not just figure out why in God's name we're wearing these, these amazing costumes, but we explain to people at home why this is happening. So, there are some mornings that we all wake up and wish we were somebody else. That happens to me approximately every second. Well, today it is possibly and even it's possible and even recommended. Hard for me to read with these glasses. Jews around the world today. Jews around the world today mark the holiday of Purim, which commemorates the deliverance of Jewish people from the ancient Persian Empire, where a plot had been formed to destroy them. By the way, Persian Empire is Iran. And listening to that type of a plot, that sounds highly familiar. Iran plotting to destroy Israel sounds very, very much like something that's happening today, but never mind that. The customs of this holiday used to boil down to listening to the public reading, usually in synagogue, of the book of Esther, sending food gifts to friends, giving charity to the poor, getting very, very, very drunk, which we like, and of course, the custom of masquerading. In short, it's the Jewish Halloween, as we said before, and in this day and age, customs and costumes have changed. So before we celebrate very heavily, me and Amit Kling in studio, let's take a look at Channel 10's culture editor, Chen Lieberman's report about Purim and how it's celebrated today, and then break it down from there.
If Purim costumes are any indication of the upcoming election's results, then the next Prime Minister of Israel will be Princess Elsa. Israel's streets are full of children in costume. 2 weeks before the elections, politics are also in the air, with recycled costumes made out of bottles.
It's not a coincidence that this year Purim is celebrated right before the elections. Can't you smell Bibi's political spin here? What does Purim remind us of? What the Iranians did to us back in the day. The evil Haman. And who do you think is Mordecai in this scenario?
The usually popular policeman costume was less conspicuous this year, and if present, then with a wink. This little girl is dressed as a fashion policewoman and arrests people who open fashion stores without telling her. For the children of foreign workers who go to school in Tel Aviv, this holiday is a chance to dress up not as others, but as themselves, like this girl, half Filipino and half Chinese. She seizes this opportunity to display her heritage. And for some other people, every day is Purim.
People miss out on this. We should dress up in costumes all the time, every day.
So back in studio with Amit Kling, my Unabomber. Degraded. But I want to ponder a serious question as we're both wearing these things. I did see two little kids dressed as what seemed to be Jihadist John yesterday. Masquerading as Daesh, which is slightly disturbing in many ways. What is the most amazing costume that you saw in the last several days in Tel Aviv?
The most amazing.
Or the one that you're like, wow, that's cool.
Actually, most everything I saw on the street was kind of rehashed, redone. People, I don't know, I still saw people kind of being lazy. I was pretty much disappointed. I usually like to go out and stare, but...
I will even, on a short story before we go outdoors, that actually one of my best friends in New York once dressed up as a complete witch, okay? And then she had a bucket full of sand. And she was a...
Oh my God.
She was a sand witch. That's genius. Okay, live to the streets of Tel Aviv to look for human sandwiches, but we are going to go to I-24 News, the fabulous I-24 News correspondent, Daniel Ziri, who is in some big circus, which is like the main event of the day in Tel Aviv when it comes to Purim. Daniel, lovely to see you again. Where's your hat? Take it away.
Oh, I should have put the hat on. It's on the floor. I'm not going to go down to get it. But basically, yes, you're right. We are here at the circus, a Florentine circus, in the north part of Tel Aviv, because, Purim is, like I said earlier, kind of the Halloween of Jewish people, the Jewish Halloween. And so the circus is the best place to be today, Yael.
Yes. No, and not only that, You look amazing in the costume that you didn't wear. You're going to get back here, and I'm going to seriously get into you that I'm completely humiliating myself here. Amit Kling looks like, you know, something out of a Persian bazaar, but you went out there with a mission. Who's with you, and who are you going to introduce to us?
All right, so I want to introduce you to Shiri, who is the head of marketing for the Florentine Circus. She is dressed up, see, for the both of us, for the both of us.
Happy Purim!
Happy Purim, Shiri!
We're in the circus.
We are in the circus. So tell us, Shiri, how do you celebrate Purim in the circus?
Of course, well, it's a natural match, Purim in the circus. We all have clowns, we dress up, we have kids coming, doing some juggling, some walking on crutch, some, you know, gymnastics.
I smell the popcorn.
Yeah, the popcorn, the hot corn, all the circus food you love.
And not only
it's really fun in the circus. We have a great show called Madhouse. People jumping and doing all kind of weird things. Fire.
Yael, you had a question?
Yeah, is there a costume, is some sort of costume competition, or, you know, in the circus? And what is the craziest costume that both of you have seen there today?
All right, let me ask you, Shiri, do you have any costume competition in the circus?
Whoa.
Is there a crazy costume that you've seen today?
There's a crazy costume. They're just coming in, all the kids. We've seen some Sarah Netanyahu's kind of dress up and maybe very actualic kind of costumes. And we have the usual clowns and ballerine and Elsa from Ice, or from Frozen, of course. And you know, we have all kind of costumes and Purim, happy Purim.
How many kids do you expect today?
Well, we have over 400 in each show, and we have like 4 shows only today, and another circle in Saturday. So, happy Purim for everyone, everybody coming to the circus.
Thank you very much, Shiri. So you see it's a party here, Yael.
Yeah, Danielle.
You should come and join.
I was about to come and join, but I would come and join only if you were actually to put on a costume again. I want to ask you, though, Danielle, did you see any crazy costumes? And when she mentioned Sarah Netanyahu, the fact that a kid would know that he's dressing up as Sarah Netanyahu would want to dress up as Sarah Netanyahu. But what did you see out there today?
Well, I actually saw one of them that was a very good Sarah Netanyahu. Actually, it was a couple. There was Bibi with the little bomb drawing, holding it during the day. And next to him, Sarah Netanyahu in the famous dress that she wore during the Knesset inauguration 2 years ago. You remember that dress, Yael?
Yes.
And bottles, plastic bottles attached to the waist. And so I don't have to explain to you why that is.
No, and probably plastic bottles and all eating, you know, pistachio ice cream. That said, Danielle, because you're guru mama out there to tell us anything and everything that's happening in Tel Aviv today, what other events are expected around Tel Aviv on this festive Halloween? Purim.
So yeah, there's a few different events. One of the main events that Tel Aviv, the municipality of Tel Aviv, organizes each year is the street party, the Tel Aviv Purim Street Party. It's exactly what it sounds like. They close off a whole street, they block a whole street, put some beer stands and alcohol and drinks and popcorn and whatever, and some DJs are coming also to bring the music to the street, and people get out to the street with their costumes and kind of take pictures of each other, dance, and just enjoy the day out. If it's a nice day like today, it's going to be perfect. That's going to be actually on Friday. And there's another thing which I recommend, Yael. I'm sure you know all about it, the zombie walk in Tel Aviv. So basically, it's exactly what it sounds like again. The zombie walk. People walk dressed as zombies. It's quite scary, actually. It happens at night. It's going to happen on Saturday. I recommend to be there. If you're too scared, then keep out.
Not at all, Danielle. The zombie walk is where I put my kids every night. But definitely, Danielle Ziri out there in the thick of it. What is Purim in Tel Aviv, and anybody who's not there is missing out. Thank you so much for being with us, Danielle. You're looking fabulous. Too bad she didn't have the hat. Amit, it was very hard for me to keep a straight face just looking at you.
I want to raise.
No, you want to. That said, what are you planning to do on Purim?
Oh God, I'm just gonna.
No, seriously. What are you planning to do? Do you go to parties or anything like that?
I do party, but I always find people who party with all this gear on, I don't understand how they do it. You know,
I'm nodding.
You know, people going to those parties with those crazy. I mean, I go out. I want to be mobile most of all.
I want to be mobile. I want to be able to drink without.
I do have a ridiculous horse head hat.
That's the thing you should be wearing, and we
I
want
should have
pictures,
been wearing it
and that
right
will come as a
now.
segment on the next show. That
Yes.
is all the time we have. Coming up next, yes, dressed like this. The only thing I can say is we will take a closer look at Madonna, who plans a global tour for her new album without falling down. We'll hear all about it, and of course, stay with us. We'll be back first. Let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome to I-24 News Morning Edition, where it is Purim. Yes, that's the Jewish Halloween celebrated. In the studio today, I am Minnie Mouse, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
You're
can you curb your
You're something,
enthusiasm?
all right.
Seriously, you're sitting here like, yeah, I guess. Here. What is this called in English?
A Gregor.
A Gregor?
Yeah.
What? A Gregor?
Yeah.
A Gregor, have one. Okay, that's Purim. Nice. Yes, the enthusiasm in the studio is really breaking all kinds.
We're not morning people.
Not
like
morning
you.
people. Thank you very much. But that would be the Culture Magazine editor Avi Rosentzvey, who's here with the best and greatest news that we most likely should have opened the show with, and that's stuff about Madonna. Who cares? You've got your purple bow on.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is my Madonna tribute.
Yeah.
Right here.
He's been talking about it all year, how he's gonna, his costume will be a tribute to Madonna.
To Madonna.
Yes.
And that's a tiny,
I try to do it
puny
every day.
Purple boa. Yes.
Well, Madonna has a new album out tomorrow.
Finally, hasn't it been done?
Well,
like,
yeah,
stuff
okay,
is
let's
leaked,
talk
this
about
is
that.
that, blah,
Okay,
blah,
so
yeah.
stuff was leaked a while ago about this album, and this week the perpetrator, the guy who leaked it, has actually been indicted.
You know what? I didn't even hear about it. Indicted? Was he really an Israeli, or am I making this up?
I didn't delve into it. I'm sorry, I didn't do
You're
my
an
homework.
amazing reporter, Avli. Go ahead.
That's something for the web. That's something for like
For the
the
web,
the
it's
internet.
not my fault.
It's
Okay.
not my thing.
Because there were rumors that he was Israeli, blah, blah, blah.
I think he's American.
He's American.
But
I want to
but-
bring everything back to us. Okay.
But, Israel and America stand shoulder
Stand
to
shoulder
shoulder.
to shoulder,
They do.
according to some.
They do. We're together. We're the same. You know,
the
we're
same.
brothers.
We're brothers at heart, yeah.
So who knows who stole the album? It doesn't.
Who cares? And so he's been indicted. blah,
So
blah.
yeah, he's been indicted and he could be facing jail time. You know,
That's the
they're
album
trying to
with
crack up.
the song entitled "I'm Madonna Bitch," right?
I'm a what?
I'm Madonna Bitch, right? No.
Is this no? I think there's one called Apologetic Bitch. Yes, there is. I think Madonna Bitch.
See, I'm a journalist.
You are a journalist. You are a journalist.
I am a journalist. Okay. Yes.
So yeah, this is called Rebel Heart, and it has been leaked a few months ago. Everybody's been talking about it, you know, and everybody's been talking about the way she tripped in the Brits.
Yes,
while
I saw that.
performing.
Yeah.
Your eyes light up. You love it.
I love it, of course.
You know, there are several things to talk about. Well, first of all, honestly, personally, I lost interest in Madonna around '98 after Ray of Light, Ray of Light, which was a wonderful album. She's been doing.
I'm just in shock. Moment of silence here, okay? Can anybody really live, I'm going to ask Daniel Roth, and say with the phrase, I lost interest in Madonna. Come on, it's Madonna.
Yeah, okay, but she's been doing like pretty shitty albums ever since
Who cares?
then.
It's Madonna. She's almost 60, and look at how she looks. And she's
that's
like a
another
mogul.
thing that people are talking about. She's talking about people, criticizing her as ageists. She says they're ageists.
Because they are.
You know?
I'm a blonde chick. You're not going to get anything but defense for Madonna from me.
I have no problem with Madonna. I love Madonna. The problem is, the thing I've been thinking about is, should you really be doing the things you've been doing at 20 at 60?
No, that I agree. That at a certain point, I need to get serious and say that you shouldn't be doing those things. At a certain point, they become quite pathetic.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, but let's talk about the album. Okay.
Please, sure.
So first of all, the thing to really know about this album is it's a breakup album. You know?
No, I did not know.
It's a heartbreak album. You know,
And number one? Okay.
But that's interesting because it's
did
not
she break
just
up
a thing. Brahim, what was his name?
Was that the 12-year-old kid?
Yes, it was the
Okay.
12-year-old kid
Wow.
she was dating.
Nice. So it's a breakout album. I will say that I find that trend that women usually come out with breakout albums. Adele,
Adele, and all of Taylor Swift's albums.
Taylor Swift.
But it's interesting because she's almost 60, and it's not. She didn't do breakup albums when she was 20, and this is her breakup album. So she's maybe she's growing up. Maybe she moved from her teens to her 20s. Okay, but I've listened to a couple of songs from this album.
And what do you think?
Well, the first song that was released, the single, sounds like Madonna. That's what she did at the Brits. But it was really surprising to me that it was about heartbreak and lost love and stuff like that. It was surprising. I don't know. And then the title song of the album, Rebel Heart, is a confessional. It's very interesting. It talks about her and her life. It kind of won me over. She talks about how I've shed my skin and reinvented myself.
I'm laughing just because when you're sitting there with a purple bar going, it won me over.
It did won me over.
It's a very surprising
It won me over. It won me over, yeah.
Rebel Heart to me sounds like a Mel Gibson film. But I mean, that's the only thing I will say.
It's a good song. It's kind of like it's a
more than acoustic Jean Baez style thing. Okay.
It's not a Jean Baez.
No,
you're giving Madonna props.
That's the next step. She will stand on the stage and do something with that. That's the next step. Yeah, I do. I'll bet you money on it as we move along. What else do you have for us?
Okay.
Sci-fi.
Sci-fi. Well, I've been telling you all year that it's been a really good year for sci-fi.
You have.
And insistently and repeatedly.
Exactly.
No, it has been a good year for sci-fi.
Transformers 4.
Oh my God. So the Saturn Awards have been announced. If you thought that award season is over, it's not. We have the geekies over here in June.
You have the geeks over here.
Yeah.
The geeks over here.
Here right now.
Leading the nominations is Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which is a fantastic film. You probably haven't seen it.
No,
it's got Robert Redford's in it.
Really?
Yeah.
In Captain America?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody eventually. Well, I'm not going to say it. As I'm wearing purple ears. Okay, Robert Redford is in Captain America?
He is.
Wow. What is like Sundance in need of? Okay, whatever.
But really, these awards show just how nice a year we've had. We've had a bunch of really good sci-fi films. We've had Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and Edge of Tomorrow and Interstellar.
How was Interstellar?
I liked it. It's really over the top.
Yes.
No, because it's like, I think it's maybe an unpopular opinion.
No,
I loved it.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah,
No, because I didn't see it, but I have kids. I have no life. Okay.
So you've probably seen Smurfs too.
No, I mean, we're not even at that stage yet.
I see.
Yeah, I'm still at Baby Einstein.
I see.
Okay.
But it has been a really good. It has been a really good year. There is the important category in this awards of best comic book to film adaptation.
Who won?
And we've had 4. No, it's a nomination.
It's a nomination. Sorry, it's a nomination. Who's on?
But well, we have 3 good films and 1 shit film. We have Captain America, Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men: Days of Future Past. Okay. All solid comic book films, and then we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which was shit.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful.
Really bad. Yeah. But it's funny how many things they enter into these categories. First of all, they have almost as many categories as the Golden Globes. No, the Golden Globes, which is worse. They have thriller, horror, fantasy, science fiction.
Oh, but sci-fi sells, and there are a bunch of genres.
Sci-fi does sell, but they do put things that don't really belong. Like, they put Birdman in here,
right,
which I don't think belongs in there. They put Whiplash in here. I don't know why. And Wes Anderson, really weird categories.
Stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
but my money is on Captain America. I'm hoping it takes everything.
I'm hoping for it because I think really Robert Redford deserves an Oscar. Just kidding. Okay, here we go. Captain America leads nomination. For some reason, I'm looking at Birdman.
Yeah, because I talked.
Because you spoke about it. Amelie, stay. You're locked in studio with your boa. As we move to Daniel Roth, the one and only, my favorite ginger. Seriously, you know that they're not
exposed as
No, there's a big battle. There's a big battle to get an emoji that's a ginger emoji because you people, really, nobody takes care of you.
What do you mean, you people?
Ginger people. It's okay.
Canadians. She means Canadians, Daniel.
I just said you people. It's all right. It's okay. My dad was ginger. But anything and everything in economy. What do you have for us in the economy magazine?
Well, first of all, we have, on one hand, we have the Ivory Coast has new mining laws, which is a huge deal.
That's a huge deal.
And,
take off my
marks a big
glasses.
shift in, but leave the ears.
Leave the ears, I know.
marked a big shift in their country post-conflict, or at least
in between conflicts.
In between. And the other is Qatar is investing heavily in Europe. Qatar has a huge sovereign fund, $115 billion in there.
Right.
They've been investing in Europe.
Oh yay! China's
like
going to own
crazy.
America, and Qatar is going to own Europe. It's wonderful.
Said the man with the purple boa.
Yes.
but we have a report, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's have a look and then break it down from there. Ivory Coast, an in-depth look, and then Daniel will explain all that it means without ears. Let's have a look.
Since conflict subsided in 2011, Ivory Coast has been aiming to revamp its economy, which has traditionally relied on agriculture. Ivory Coast is the world's biggest cocoa producer, but now politicians are planning to tap what they call an immense mining potential that the country holds. A new mining code includes new rules to attract investors and to regulate the mining industry that has worked under questionable auspices.
We increased the cost of the permits and some of the penalties, and reduced the size of the permits. And some stronger criteria for application and the way joint ventures work, and the general improvement in the administration of the mining industry.
While the bill still needs to be signed by the president, it is expected to go through. Included in the bill, which will replace 1985 legislation, are new rules to stem corruption between miners and government officials. The new measures also include tax and customs breaks for exploration projects and transparency in the permit process, which experts say has led to unscrupulous investors, according to the AFP report. Though the Prime Minister says there is a lot of room for growth, indeed only 5% of national earnings comes from mining, he also notes that there is a lot that has been done.
Today, the mining industry is expanding to create 6,640 direct jobs and about 18,000 indirect jobs, with 460 million euros revenue in 2014. The mining industry is then an activity which contributes to the national economy and job creation.
As Ivory Coast looks ahead, it will be faced with the challenge of balancing environmental needs, strong labor regulations, and economic stability.
Okay, because it's Purim, Daniel Roth, I'm going to turn to you with the question that Avri, the man with the purple boa, came up with. Why is there a white man speaking about the Ivory Coast?
Well, first of all, there are many white people who live in Africa. He's actually from a company, and that was one of the interesting notes about this story, is that these laws, almost silently, almost without much fanfare, were co-written by companies and the government
and big corporations.
This is true across the board in the world. When you look at American laws, they also look towards corporate experts, as they call them. So this happens here in Israel. It happens. It's not unique to the Ivory Coast, but it is important because these kind of mining companies. I come from Canada, where there's a lot of mining companies working out in the world. They have their home bases, particularly gold in Toronto. Right. It's a major problem, the way mining companies tend to treat local governments.
And that's the mildest understatement of the year, I think. Yeah,
right.
If we're looking at mining across the board in that continent, and ways to combat it. Anything?
Well, so that's what they're trying to do here. These new laws are.
In terms of these laws, do we think these new laws are? We'll continue, and then I'll stop you again.
It's a question. First, they haven't been implemented yet. If they can balance the three big things, which is economic stability, environmental stability, and labor rights, then we've got good laws. Yeah. If they can't balance those three things, then there isn't a sustainable framework for continuing to mine, for continuing to explore, and for people continuing to live there. Right. Those are the three pieces that basically across the board, people who don't have an interest one way or the other will say, these are the things
These
you need.
are the things that we need. Daniel, I love that you always come to us with the depressing economic news of the morning. But
Robert Redford.
No. And from one Daniel to another, but pick your, what are they called?
Groggers.
Groggers. Okay. From the Groggers in the studio, back finally and lastly to Daniel Ziri, the beautiful Daniel Ziri, in the festival and the tent that is, woohoo! You're getting cheers in the studio. And Daniel, take us away and end the show. You were at the Purim Festival and finally with the hat and an apple. What's going on there?
I'm at the circus, Yael. You wanted the hat. I put the hat back on. I got my little candy apple here, and I'm going to go join the party and leave you there.
Amen, Danielle.
You should come, I'm telling you.
I'm on my way. Save an apple for me. God bless you. See, Daniel Ziri does everything I say.
I want a candy apple.
You want a candy apple? Okay. If you do everything I say, you're going to get a candy apple. Okay. Now, that was it for us, guys. Thank you for staying with us. Of course, don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, all those social networks. And tune in tomorrow for another edition of I-24 News Morning Edition. I was trying to think of something to tease of what I will wear. It might be nothing, so tune in. First, obviously, the news.
Yeah.